What's happening, man? Joni here. Another beautiful Thursday. And what I wanted to talk about real quick was something I've noticed lately, and I've taken observation even within myself, that in the self-help, personal development era that's so popular, people talk about sticking points in their life and things that keep them stuck or in a rut and not performing their best. I mean, this is what personal development is all about, right? And usually when you get into the psychology of this stuff, they talk about traumatic events in your past that keep you from reaching your potential or a bad mindset about money that keeps you from reaching your full potential financially, or relationship problems because of certain relationship issues you had when you were young or that you observed when you were young. And so what I've noticed is that it's very easy, if you were a person who experienced significant trauma or a traumatic event when you were young, and let's use the example of like sexual or physical abuse. That's a pretty substantial circumstance to draw upon and say, well, of course I have this issue. I mean, and not to use it as a crutch, but people who have experienced something traumatic like that, they know they have. And I think it's easy to, at a certain level of maturity, recognize that is most likely a huge stumbling block for you. And so it gives them the ability to focus on this substantial event to begin their life's work, or to begin their restructuring and their rethinking, their retraining of their mind, their help, their path to getting over that scenario and that trauma. But then I think there's a large majority of the population that did not experience such significant traumatic events, but nonetheless are still in sticking points and still experiencing these areas of their life they cannot excel in. And one of those types of people who does not experience such a traumatic event in their life might actually have more trouble reaching their potential than someone who has had significant trouble. A lot of times, if you ever take note of people in the spotlight, self-help people who have reached these great heights of personal development and success, they will often talk about their traumatic experiences, their difficult experiences. In fact, it's not likely that, or even common, that you would hear someone prevalent or popular or famous for self-development or business-wise or things like that say things like, well, my childhood was pretty easy. I didn't really experience any hardships. No, almost all of them have gone through some significant, changing, triggering circumstance in their life. So either poverty, or they came here from a different country with nothing, or the dad was in jail, or the mom passed away and they were raised by the dad in a one-bedroom bathroom apartment or something ridiculous, but substantial nonetheless. I say ridiculous not to undermine it, but there's always some circumstance that they use to draw upon and create this resilience, right? And that resilience caused this, the self-reflection later in life and an experience to draw upon to better themselves. Whereas someone who has an easygoing life, let's just say more easygoing or not such a significant traumatic experience, may have trouble. And I think the reason why is because many times we have had traumatic experiences, they're just not so significant. And I'll give you an example. I was listening to a therapist talk about a client one time, and this client was a 24-year-old woman who had experienced self-blame for her parents and their relationship, and she became a codependent because of it. And I say codependent, if you don't know what codependent is, it's I won't get into the whole definition of codependency, but for lack of a longer, more in-depth definition, codependency is someone who depends on the validation of other people to feel to feel good about themselves. In other words, they don't like people not liking them, and they will often go out of their way and self-sacrifice what they want to get other people to like them. So they are codependent on other people liking them to feel wholesome, to feel good about themselves. So it's deeper than that on a lot of levels, but in a nutshell, that's what it is, codependency. So this 24-year-old client, when she was about 10 years old, she actually brought home a bad report card, okay? And she had like a D or something on her report card, or an F or whatever it was, but she showed her parents, and that just so happened to be the night that her parents had decided to tell her and her young brother that they were getting a separation towards divorce. Had nothing to do with her report card, but from that period in her life, this girl associated that her bad grades had caused her parents to split up. Even if she was cognitive of the difference, right? No, there's no way my bad grade could cause them to get a divorce or to separate. Even if they told her, hey, it has nothing to do with this, but me and your mom have been thinking about this, she still her mind associated bad grade. That was the day that they separated or announced their separation. So in her mind, that underperformance caused this separation. And she had this performance anxiety now where she would never want to fail again, right? She had this this high standard for herself, yet at the same time it was driven by the idea that a lack of that standard or that high the high grades that she could have gotten actually is the reason why her parents separated, or it correlated with their separation. So she had relationship issues, she had self-blame because of that, she had a lot of anxiety on herself to perform really well, when really it was insignificant to her parents separating. But it took, hard therapy for her to understand this is the triggering point. And it was just a misunderstanding from a 10-year-old. Even if the parents were explaining it had nothing to do with it, that was still her traumatic event. And so, I'll give a personal experience in the same way. When I was young, probably around the same age, between 8 and 10, my dad bought this big industrial push broom, right? And so when we would cut the grass, this is back before there were gas blowers and electric blowers that were so common, but it was like, we just push broomed all the dry grass clippings off the driveway back into the yard after we cut the grass. And so after I cut the grass and I decided to clean up the driveway, and my dad had this home office that kind of overlooked the driveway, and all the grass was just scattered all over the driveway. And so I grabbed the push broom. Now it was brand new, I'd never used a push broom, but I knew when my mom would sweep the garage or sweep the kitchen, she would always pull the broom towards her like this. She's pulling the broom, how you normally sweep a house, you kind of pull the broom towards you. And so that's how I used the push broom. Big ass wide industrial push broom, but I was pulling it towards me, right? And I did the whole damn driveway like that. And so I went inside. I knew my dad was watching, and I knew he'd be proud that I just cleaned up my yard clippings with his new broom that he brought. And so I go inside and I said, hey Dad, did you see I swept the whole driveway off with the new broom? And he may have complimented me first. He may have said, that's great, good job, but I don't remember that. What I heard, and what I remember it, was it's called a push broom. You're supposed to push the broom, not pull it. It's called a push broom for a reason. And I think I actually went in my room and cried. I felt so, and he probably even said it funny. Hey son, it's called a push broom for a reason. Haha. You know what I mean? But I took that as kind of a slap in the face. I didn't get his approval. It was very emotionally, man, it sucked. It hurt. Like I said, I think I went to my room and actually cried about it. Now, one might say, well, you were just an oversensitive fucking pussy. Whatever, to each in his own, right? But nonetheless, that affected me in that way. And I think if there was that was one event, but there was probably some other significant events before that where, as a young boy, you tend to seek your dad's approval, right? That's kind of what we do as men. We do things to get the attention of our fathers. And God forbid those who don't have fathers, I guess they get the attention from their mother, or if if it is a psychological necessity to feel like you fit in a masculine mindset, this is probably why men without fathers gravitate towards, gang or peer pressure to try to get the approval from others. That's also a very popular notion. But, in my experience with my dad was raised in that generation to where they're not very emotionally outgoing. Now, my dad still, he was a great guy. I was never physically abused. I was never, neglected in any way. In fact, me and my dad had a great relationship growing up. We grew up having some very similar hobbies, hunting and fishing and doing outdoors things, and we did them all the time. I even went on a couple big trips with just me and my dad, and so it's not like I was neglected or anything, but there were these small moments where I really wanted his approval and I didn't get it. And that was enough to keep me searching for that external validation that I never got as a kid. And so, although I didn't have these major traumatic events in my life from my parents or anything like that, this has caused me extensive issues personally that I've had to work through and that I'm continuing to work through. And they go in the area of codependency, where I'm looking for external validation that I'm a good person, a hard worker. Now, that being said, it's made me extremely dedicated and very efficient when it comes to working because I'm seeking that approval. I don't like being told I suck or I'm no good. I don't like telling people no. I had to go through that period. And I'm still finishing out a lot of those elements that are inhibitive of my personal growth based on that mindset. So anyways, I just wanted to share that because it's a personal experience that I think a lot of people can relate to. And the nutshell of this is that I'm realizing that if you don't have a big traumatic event in your life, it may be more difficult for you in many ways to actually reach your full potential. And in no way am I saying it's a black and white issue. It's not like if you have traumatic events in your life, you're going to succeed. No, there's some people who have traumatic events in their life who go further down the rabbit hole, and that even makes it more difficult for them. But to each in his own. I'm just simply making the notion that if you don't have traumatic events in your life that are significant, like abuse or poverty or anything like that, that it can still be very difficult to pinpoint these almost minute, seemingly inconsequential circumstances that cause massive personality and character traits even decades down the line that can inhibit your personal growth. So if you're one of these people, take note of this, and I'd love to hear some comments on that. What do you think? Are you someone who has experienced something like this, either major traumatic events that you were able to surpass and overcome easily or with difficulty that have excelled your personal growth? And at the same time, are you a person that really experienced very small, almost insignificant circumstances in your life that have caused major stumbling blocks for your personal growth? So let me know either way. I love feedback. I love comments. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. I love talking about these real concepts and these real circumstances that affect us all, from the average Joe to those of higher caliber. And in the idea of self-actualizing, I think it's important to lay these things out so you can all better understand them and reach those levels of personal development that all of us want to reach. So on that note, I'm going to leave. Have a fantastic day. Until next time, Mangione out.